I'm historian Angus Constam. Let's answer your questions from the internet.
This is Pirate Support.
At Straight Grubbin asked, where did the pirate accent come from? Because there's no way in hell that people really talk like that. It was invented by the actor Robert Newton when he did the Walt Disney film Treasure Island back in 1950. He used his native Somerset accent and embellished it a bit, and that created the sound of the pirate, essentially.
Hardly worth dividing, is it, George?
It's a great accent, but it's just one actor's view of what a pirate would sound like. Pirates would have come from just about any port in Britain or Europe, or even colonial America. When Robert Newton chose that accent, he'd no idea 60, 70, 80 years later, people are using it as the established pirate accent.
Thank you kindly, Doctor. You came in the nick of time.
It shows you the power and the impact of that film at the time and how it captured people's imagination. At Corby Nest asks, why are pirates called pirates? Pirates really comes from a Greek word which means to attack or to rob. Pirates existed as far back as the ancient Egyptians. And then when the Romans came along, their word pirates essentially meant a sea robber. They had whole naval patrols out trying to hunt down pirates. Famously, Pompey the Great organized a sweep through the Mediterranean to capture all the pirates he found. And they were using the term then, so it's kind of stuck. At Luca Don Muse says, what's your favorite rule of the pirate code? We have a few examples of pirate codes, and they're really codes of conduct within the ship to govern how the pirates operate on board the ship. I like the fact that they're very democratic. For instance, how any plunder is held in common by the pirates and divided up. They also have ones that give you an idea of what life was like on board. Basic things like no candles while you're gambling and drinking below decks. That's a very sensible one. Knock over a candle in a wooden ship and all hell breaks loose. At Sean Rome 1 asks, what do pirates do for fun? We don't know an awful lot about what pirates did on board, but we have a few records from merchant captains taken prisoner and held on board pirate ships. There was a lot of card playing and an awful lot of drinking. Pirates, essentially, every time they looted a ship with drink in it, they would lay into the stuff. Ships carrying things like Madeira wine was regularly imported to colonial America. Pirates were well stocked with drink, but also an awful lot of just lying around looking bored because they were waiting for a victim. That involved a lot of long passages at sea doing very little. Great Sambino, I wonder if pirates really did use wooden peg legs, or is this just common folklore? They must have gotten seriously bad splinters. Often people with peg legs were used as cooks, just as Long John Silver was in Treasure Island. Peg legs are probably the only kind of prosthetic available. As for splinters, I'm sure that happened. At Wheelie Average, what's the most famous non-fictional pirate through history? There's a lot to choose from. Probably the instant iconic pirate is Blackbeard, Edward Teach. Instantly recognizable, he did things like blockade Charleston, which really upset the apple cart in colonial America. People didn't know where he was going to attack next, and for a short period, merchant ships wouldn't go to sea for the risk of being attacked by pirates. His parents owned a plantation in Jamaica. They were well off, but he got the bug when he was a privateer. He obviously liked it, he was good at it, and so when he grabbed the chance, he went out pirating on his own account. At Luke 4337 says, weren't pirates democratic and overthrew bad captains? Pirates were very democratic. At the time, we're speaking about the early 18th century, it was a very strained, constricted sort of lifestyle, ruled by the church, ruled by laws. Pirates were rebelling against that. They were rebelling against tyrannical merchant captains who could have them flogged or even killed without any recourse to the law. They could vote in a captain they liked and vote out one who didn't suit their needs, and that happened several times. If the pirates weren't happy, they'd call a meeting and they would decide if the captain should stay or go. Pirate captains like Charles Vane were deposed by their crew. He and his crew that supported him were shoved onto this other ship and told to fend for themselves, while the pirates elected a new captain, in this case Jack Rackham, and he sailed off to continue his piratical career somewhere else. At Honey Nut Berrios says, pirates never actually made people walk the plank. There's no real evidence that pirates ever did. It came largely from J.M. Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie used the whole plot device of walking a plank to add dramatic impact to his story, because pirates wouldn't bother sticking a plank out and making people walk it, except in fiction. Normally, a pirate would just cut your throat and throw your body overboard, and there's plenty of examples of that happening. Pirates could be nasty. Some, like George Lowther, made a name for being almost psychopathically vicious, and they would often pick on the captain of a ship that they captured as a figure of authority, and they'd often torture him just to make his life a misery before killing him and throwing him overboard. At Ross3 said, so you're telling me Jack Sparrow wasn't a real pirate? Well, no, he was a character beautifully played by Johnny Depp. His inspiration for it was largely Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, because he just liked that crumpled but dynamic look. Johnny Depp just took that, embellished it and ran with it, just like Robert Newton did all those years before with Treasure Island. He's actually basing his look not just on Keith Richards, but in real pirates. Look at the hair. That's straight from Edward Teach from Blackbeard. He's got a captain's coat, the kind of fancy coat that a pirate captain would wear, albeit kind of shabby. This is the sort of thing they'd steal from a boat. The whole thing is kind of exaggerated, but underlying it, there's a sort of real pirate look in there. Another thing with Johnny Depp is he's always a bit drunk. Pirates did steal a lot of rum from ships. At Betha Cowboys makes a good point, and he says, how am I supposed to pay attention in class when gay pirates exist? There were gay pirates. Bartholomew Roberts, probably the most successful pirate in terms of the number of ships he captured, was definitely a gay pirate. His partner was one of the crew and was equally ferocious. In a very constricting society, being a pirate was a great place to be. You were part of that pirate crew, and they all looked after each other very well. At Fisherbeck PB asks a great question. What's the difference between a privateer and a pirate? In time of war, governments give privateers a letter of marque, basically a license to become a licensed pirate. For instance, during Queen Anne's War, anyone could go get letter of marque, and if they had financial backing, they could gather together a crew for a ship, buy a ship, and go off hunting. Anytime that ship was captured, it was taken back to port and legally sold. The government would get its cut, about 20%, and the rest was sheer profit, shared between any shareholders in the enterprise and then amongst the crew. The trouble is, when the war stopped, those licenses were terminated. A lot of pirates had spent a lot of time learning the skills. They didn't want to go back to the drudgery of being a regular merchant seaman. They decided to keep going. A pirate attacks any ship regardless of nationality. They're just there to hunt the seas. At about 1713, 1714, there was an immense upsurge of piracy, mainly in the Caribbean and the American seaboard, but also over in coasts of West Africa. The Golden Age of Piracy, a modern term for a deadly problem. At Markovic says, why is it trying to drink off rum while watching Pirates of the Caribbean? Rum and the Caribbean kind of go together. The main trading good of large parts of the Caribbean was sugar. Sugar was used to make rum. And now we associate rum with pirates, largely because they operated a lot of the time in the Caribbean, captured rum and drank it. At Charlotte Murray says, get out of here with your misogyny. There are plenty of female pirates in One Piece who were inspired by real-life female pirates. There are not many examples of female pirates, but in the contemporary, very strict society of the 18th century, the whole idea that women would become pirates and go to sea, that was truly shocking and sensational, so people loved it. Anne Bonny and Mary Read were part of a pirate crew, one of Captain Calico Jack Rackham. They both dressed like men and fought and drank and did all the things other pirates did. Anne Bonny was recruited first. She was probably the lover of Jack Rackham, at least that's what the records suggest. And then Mary Read, who was a friend of hers, joined as well. They weren't just going along for the ride, they were full-on cutthroat pirates. And they, in the last battle before they were captured, were the only ones who were able to put up a real fight, mainly because the men had all been drinking. When Jack Rackham's ship was captured off the western end of Jamaica, they were taken to Port Royal as prisoners and thrown in the jail. It was a sensation that shocked the world that women would be pirates. Almost all the crew were taken away and hung, but Anne Bonny and Mary Read, they both pleaded that they were pregnant and they managed to throw themselves in the leniency of the court, and they got away with it. At Yahaf Sal says, how does one get an access code to become a pirate? How do you become a pirate? You needed to be a sailor. Landlubbers were of no use. Pirates were merchant seamen. If they mutinied against a nasty tyrannical captain and took over a ship, that was one of the first access codes to becoming a pirate. The other one is once pirates were at sea, they captured a merchant ship. They'd often ask the crew, do you want to join us? That's a big step though, because once they do, they couldn't go home. They couldn't go back to their families. That was it. They were a pirate until they died. At WhaleFan69 asks, what did pirates do before sunscreen? We have accounts of them using tallow, the stuff they used to grease ropes. They often put that on their faces to block themselves from the sun. But what pirates tended to do is have a very big straw hat. At Faislal RB4 asks, has any pirate treasure been found? Buried treasure. That's a modern invention. That was a main plot in Treasure Island, written by Robert Louis Stevenson. Pirate treasure, while there probably is some out there, it's probably lost by accident, because any time they captured a ship, often it didn't have treasure on board. They were capturing the regular merchant ships of the time, so they would have things like rum or sugar or clothing. The only occasion when treasure was buried that I know of is when Captain Kidd came back to New York from his pirating exploits in the Indian Ocean, and he wasn't sure how he'd be received, so he buried his treasure on the coast of Long Island, just outside New York, and then went into the city to see the governor. It didn't really work out for him. He was immediately arrested. He was interrogated and had to reveal where the treasure was. Here's one from at Cora. What's an average pirate's life expectancy? Hollywood seems to give the idea that they can be old and grizzled. Life expectancy at the time, we're speaking about the early 18th century, for a seaman was fairly short. A lot of pirates were young, teenagers or in their 20s. You knew you were eventually going to be captured, hunted down, and executed. So the chances of being old and grizzled and retiring as a pirate kind of slim. At T.S. Morehouse says, I wonder why pirates are associated with parrots and what started the trend. Parrots are exotic creatures. They're novelties in Europe. Any seaman in the Caribbean would pick up things like parrots and take them home and sell them as exotic pets. At Virgil of Limbo said, I wonder why they gave Blackbeard his name. He's not the only one with a black beard, or was he the only one at the time? Here's a picture of Blackbeard at the time. He was described with a great big beard. He had it tied up often with ribbons. He also had bits of burning slow match used to fire guns, basically burning cord stuck under his hat to make him look more ferocious. So he looked kind of satanic, and that's exactly what pirates wanted. At Bruminate asked, what did pirates wear? What we've kind of established nowadays as the pirate look was essentially not worn at the time at all. It was created by an American artist, Howard Pyle, in the late 19th century, who did a lot of illustrations for kids' books. Before he did these children's books, Howard Pyle studied Spanish guerrillas, and he had lots of sketches of them with headscarves and the whole look. And he said, right, that's a great look for pirates. Here's an example of what pirates actually dressed like. They wore the clothes of seamen at the time. They were, after all, sailors. So they'd have shirts, they'd have sun hats. Very popular is the tricorn, like this. I wish these came back into fashion. I love these things. But that's not that practical on a ship. What they'd often wear is something like a woolly hat. You see them wearing little bowler hats or hats like this. Sensible, comfortable clothes, even shorts. At Desert Taxol asks, what sort of weapons did pirates use? Of course, they wanted to capture a ship without having to fight on the decks. There's a risk they could be killed, the ship could be damaged that they're trying to capture, and all that plunder on board would be lost to them if it sank. When pirates captured ships, they often took the guns from it and kept them on board their own ship. So essentially, they had the best weaponry and all that they could lay their hands on. The main thing to stop a ship would be a cannon like this. They normally keep the heavy guns down in the hold where the ballast is, and then they bring them up when they need them. But you also have little swivel guns like this on the rails of the ship. They're kind of anti-personnel weapons, and you would blast out musket balls and bags of shot from these things that were designed to spray across the decks and kill people. When you got alongside, you needed things like these. These are grenados, essentially little metal balls filled with explosives, like a modern grenade. There's no pin to pull, you just have to light the fuse and throw it and hope for the best. You have swords, axes, pikes, boarding pikes, cutlasses, muskets, and even long muskets like this. So the whole range of weaponry was available to them. I'm Miss Bluey says, how the hell did pirates build such awesome ships? Why are criminals so creative? Pirates didn't build the ships, they stole them. Much better. Often, pirates would start small with a single-masted sloop or even a canoe. You would build up your crew. You would often trade ships for bigger ships. What they did, though, is they embellished them. Take Blackbeard. When he captured this French slave ship called La Concorde off Martinique, he took it to a deserted island. He converted it to make it a better pirate ship. And that meant cutting down the decks so it was one big platform so the pirates could attack from anywhere. He added more gun ports. He essentially blinged up the ship so it was the perfect fighting platform for piracy. S.L. Morrison 9. Do you know that pirates helped free slaves in the 1700s? I don't remember seeing that in any history books. Well, yeah, they captured slave ships. The Caribbean was essentially an economy that demanded the use of slaves. But what the pirates liked was attacking them off the West African coast because they had trade goods, and they often had things like gold dust on board. And when they did capture one with slaves on board, if they were seamen, they'd recruit them. Otherwise, they put them ashore. So it was kind of a reprieve for people who were captured. They managed to get a taste of freedom thanks to the pirates. Of course, being dumped on the shore wasn't the end of the story, because often in West Africa, the coastal communities were the ones who had actually gone out as slave hunters and sold you into slavery. So you'd probably have some other challenges to face once the pirates have set you free. Some pirate crews, like the ones of Bartholomew Roberts, had a lot of Africans on board, and a lot of them were former slaves who decided to join the pirates, and the pirates accepted them because they could fight. About a third of the crew could be Africans. At Edward G6 1972 059. What's the name given to the skull and crossbones pirate flag? The original pirate flags were known as the Jolly Roger, from the French Jolly Rouge. The red is a warning sign, but so too is the use of skull and crossbones. Hourglasses to show that your time's running out. Skeletons and skulls are signs of death. They often have ones with pirates drinking with the devil. It's all designed to intimidate, and you see a flag like that coming, it means this is the fate that's going to happen to you. We're going to kill you unless you surrender. At the Victor 2 says, did pirates have pirate bathrooms on their pirate ships, or did they just over the side when they were at sea? In any ship at the time, there wasn't really much in the way of bathrooms. The naval word for a toilet is the heads, and at the front end of the ship, that tended to be the place where the crew would use as their bathroom. So they did over the side. At Cora makes the very sensible question of, did pirates live in the water, or did they have homes to go to? Pirates make the choice to be a pirate. You and your pirate crew are a floating community. Once you became a pirate, that was it. You cut ties from everything you knew from society, your family, your friends, everything, until either you get a government pardon and you can walk away scot-free, or else you're captured and usually hung, like Bartholomew Roberts, who was captured and killed. His crew were taken back and tried in a mass trial and executed. That was a signal, as much as anything else, to other merchant seamen not to become pirates, or else you will face the same grisly fate. At Jeff Gill says, why do so many pirates have to wear eye patches? It's a dangerous business being a sailor. Sometimes you get your eye poked out. Yes, you'd wear an eye patch if your eye was damaged or knocked out. Probably not like this one with the skull and crossbones on. That's a kind of modern bonus. There is an idea that eye patches are useful for saving an eye for use in the dark. It improves your night vision, but there's no real evidence that pirates did that. The most likely thing is somebody's had their eye poked out. That's all the questions for today. Thanks for watching. This has been Pirate Support.